Public health officials are again warning of a triple-demic ahead of the holiday season. After a stable past few weeks, respiratory virus trends have started to rise again. So how can you protect yourself and your loved ones against COVID, RSV, and the flu this season? Raywat Deonandan is an epidemiologist at the University of Ottawa. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Now, we usually see these types of viruses start to go up during this time of year. We've been living with COVID for a while now. How concerned are you going into the holiday season?
I'm always a little bit concerned. This is when we see more flux, more use of the hospital system, and we have this ongoing crisis in our hospital system with human resources being taxed. And now we have, as you mentioned, the triple-demic, COVID, RSV, flu, and other respiratory viruses. There is not a lot of relief in sight for the next few years, so this is going to be the norm in this time of year for the next few years, I fear.
And when we talk about COVID, RSV, flu, is there one that's worse than the other?
Depends how we define worse.
Okay.
And it's going to be worse for different age groups and different subpopulations. They're all not fun. The good news is we have vaccines for most of them. Even RSV, there's a new vaccine. And the better news is that we know how to protect ourselves by diminishing transmission and so forth. It's best to avoid all of them if you can. And so I guess we can talk about how we can avoid them, right? Number one best thing is vaccination. We have the COVID booster shot, which is very good. It's distressing how few people have chosen to get it, though. In Ontario, it's like 900,000 people, which is 6% of the population. In Ottawa, a bit higher, like 7%. But the pediatric population in particular, I feel, should be seeking this vaccine more. The under fives, only about 5,000 people, 5,000 kids in Ontario have got it. And yet that's the age group that's most likely to be hospitalized amongst the pediatric population for COVID.
Is there any understanding about why the uptake for this vaccine has been so low?
I think it's a combination of disinformation or misinformation, a lot of fear-mongering online, and people just don't know it exists. Right? Like how few people actually know that it's new, it's different, and it's needed. Now, I don't blame public health for this. There probably just isn't a lot of resources set aside for communication of this particular vaccine, given the other crises we have to deal with. But that's what we're dealing with, a lack of awareness.
Yeah. Can you tell our audience, where they would go to get this vaccine if they want it?
Drugstores apparently are most likely to have it. Your family doctor should have it. However, family doctors are struggling to get doses and to get doses of the flu vaccine, which is a political issue. Hopefully, our politicians can step in and expedite that process better. But right now, it looks like drugstores are the best place to go.
Okay. And aside from vaccinations, masking, are people still masking?
Yeah, like I masked when I came into the studio. I took off my mask to talk to you. But masking, strategic masking, I highly recommend, especially in crowded indoor settings when you don't know the infection status of people present. So hospitals, healthcare settings, absolutely. Grocery stores, that's up to you. But if it's crowded, absolutely wear a mask, especially an N95 style respirator.
Okay. Hand washing, obviously.
Well, hand washing is great for diseases that are transmitted via fomites, which is surfaces. That's the common cold and that's the flu. COVID, less so. For COVID, we care about airborne issues like ventilation.
Okay. And when we talk about the new COVID variants, HV1, XBB, what do we know about them?
So these are all descendants of Omicron. Omicron had some kids, BA had some kids, XBB had a bunch of kids, HK, HV, EG, etc.
Okay.
The new COVID booster is targeted to XBB. So currently the dominant strain in Ontario is HV1 and HK3 and EG5. These are all descendants of XBB. That's kind of good news. It means the booster is well tweaked towards them. The bad news is that increasingly the variants are finding it easier and easier to transmit. So they hug the cell more snugly. That's the bad news. What we want is to stop the production of variants if we can, and we do that through vaccination, hopefully.
Right, and so people are going to be getting together, of course, over the holiday season. What are the main things people should be thinking about as they gather with family and friends?
I'm going to push vaccination again. Consider getting the booster if you haven't done so already. Consider restricting your contact with people if you have symptoms. And consider getting a COVID test, right, to make sure that if you've got symptoms, it's not infectious, because the COVID rapid test still works to a large extent to allow us to determine if you're infectious or not. And wear a mask if you are uncertain. I know it's socially uncomfortable these days, but it is an option we always have to protect ourselves. Even if you are not worried about yourself, worry about the people you might transmit to. Other than that, have good conversations with your family members, making sure that they are protecting themselves in their everyday lives. That way, those extra layers of protection are there for you.
Okay. Thank you very much for this. I
It's
appreciate your time.
my pleasure. Thank you.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan is an epidemiologist at the University of Ottawa.